Since the demise of WCW, it became hard to argue against wanting an alternative in American pro wrestling. Things were at their best in the wrestling industry when there were two promotions battling to be the top dog, or at the very least, things were at their best when fans had options, and when wrestlers had options as well. And sure, ever since WCW went under in 2001, a few promotions popped up here and there trying to fill the void left behind by WCW. And while at times it seemed like one of those promotions would break through to the next level to truly become the alternative we were missing, it never really transpired. During this time, it truly felt like a huge major league alternative to the WWE wouldn't happen again in our lifetimes. That is, until a certain faction in professional wrestling known as the Elite went and changed the world, and then got a billionaire NFL owner to back them in the process, and the rest is history. No offense to TNA, who I was a huge fan of, but All Elite Wrestling became the first true alternative to the WWE since WCW. But what separated AEW from every other promotion from 2002 and 2018 that tried to become the big number 2 promotion in America was fan support. AEW had a large section of wrestling fans rooting for them to succeed, and that's what put them a level above everybody else that tried before them. But there was also another factor that put AEW on another level right out of the gate, and that was signing every big name in wrestling outside of the WWE to a contract in year 1. With a name like All Elite Wrestling, AEW had a lot to live up to, but they quickly showed that they were serious in building a roster of wrestlers that could compete with any major wrestling promotion in the world. Fast forward 2.5 years after AEW was founded, and their roster has grown exponentially with world-class talent from across the globe, putting the Elite in All Elite Wrestling. This is Tranquilo Club, and this is how AEW is building a world-class roster for the ages. Tony Khan had the fortunate luck of creating a wrestling company when a handful of free agents' contracts were expiring at the same time. And these weren't just any free agents, this was the Elite, who had just put on the biggest independent wrestling show in American history. Add to that the signing of Chris Jericho, and AEW had star power right out of the gate. And that's not even including the signings of other world-class talents like the Lucha Bros or PAC. And of course, the arrival of Jon Moxley at Double or Nothing 2019 truly changed everything. A former WWE World Champion leaving WWE in his prime to join AEW was a huge deal. It sent a signal to the wrestling industry, and that signal was that AEW was for real, because Moxley didn't debut in front of a crowd of 200 people. No, he debuted in front of a crowd of 11,000 people in one of the world's most famous arenas in the MGM Grand Garden Arena. This felt major league. This felt next level. This felt like something we hadn't seen since WCW. And it helped that AEW had just put on one of the best wrestling events of the past decade. Double or Nothing 2019 had a lot to live up to, and it definitely did, and that was down to the roster they put together for their first show ever. Not only did AEW showcase the world-class talents that I mentioned earlier, but they also put a spotlight on young talent, and this worked in their favor because highlighting young talent that hadn't worked for any major promotion in the world before ensured that AEW shows still felt fresh and exciting. We were seeing something we hadn't seen anywhere before. And AEW's investment in young talent has more than paid off. In addition to their initial main event scene, which consisted of Cody Rhodes, Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, Jon Moxley, and PAC, AEW did an amazing job building up guys like Hangman Page, Jungle Boy, Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, and MJF to the point where any of these guys facing off against the main eventers I just mentioned felt natural and believable. And that's how AEW naturally created depth in their roster. By giving these young guys consistent TV time and booking them well for their level of experience, AEW's audience became familiarized with these talents and therefore built a bond with them early in their careers. And the fact that we'll see them grow and develop as characters and wrestlers means our connection to them as an audience will only grow stronger as they eventually become mainstays in the AEW main event scene. Now, of course, that was only year 1 that I was covering. Everything I just said said up to now still applies to AEW 2.5 years later. As AEW keeps proving itself as a viable alternative to the WWE, its roster keeps growing exponentially, and that's on all fronts: the men's division, the tag team division, and the women's division as well. For the most part, the signings that AEW has made over the past 12 months have been elite. They're set up with talents from the past and the present and the future. From having legends like Sting, Christian Cage, and Matt Hardy come in, mostly in a supporting role for the younger guys, to bringing in younger guys for the future like Ricky Starks, The Acclaimed, Top Flight, Lee Johnson, and Powerhouse Hobbs. And of course, the same goes for the women's division, which is particularly younger than most of the other divisions in AEW. Because there weren't too many top female free agents when AEW was founded, they were forced to invest in the future. And sure, right out of the gates, they signed women who had years of experience under their belt, in particular the Joshi talents like Hikaru Shida, Emi Sakura, Yuka Sakazaki, and Riho, who's very young for her level of experience in particular. And of course, in year 2, they eventually brought in Serena Deeb, who's helped immensely with the women's division in AEW. But the AEW women's division as of right now is mostly built on prospects for the future, and this includes the likes of Anna Jay, Ty Conti, Jade Cargill, Red Velvet, Layla Hirsch, and then there's someone like Britt Baker, who has become a star particularly under the AEW banner, despite her level of TV experience, and this would only be possible in AEW because they allow their young talents to get consistent TV time. Now, besides all of this, AEW has also brought in talents in their prime that could easily slot into the main event scene. And these are talents like FTR, Eddie Kingston, Brian Cage, Lance Archer, Miro, Andrade El Idolo, and Malachi Black. These were all men who came in ready to go, and AEW knew it, which is why they slotted the majority of them into major programs right out of the gate. But the great thing about AEW is that just because you're an outsider with hype coming in, you don't just go automatically for the title. You have to earn your way to a title shot in AEW, and that's because wins and losses actually matter in this promotion. But the people coming into AEW are okay with that because they do a really good job in balancing their talent's TV time. Talent just doesn't sit in the back every week waiting to get used, because AEW rotates their talent really well. I mean, just look at the card for Road Rager and then look at the card for Fyter Fest Week 1 and see how many talent is being rotated in and out from week to week. It's actually really great that AEW does this, in my opinion, because by doing this, AEW doesn't overdo rematches and they don't overexpose talent. It keeps things fresh and exciting from week to week, and this is where AEW's roster truly shines. This is when you truly realize the depth of AEW's roster and see how many individuals they manage to get on TV that fans actually have a connection to. The real reason why this roster is so stacked is because AEW does a great job in utilizing all their talent, from veterans and legends to talent currently in their prime to the future stars of wrestling. You can have the most talented roster in the world, but if you're not utilizing them correctly and just using the same 5 guys and having rematch after rematch, then what's the point in having all that talent at your disposal? The more AEW proves that they can balance everybody's TV time and give everybody a chance to shine, then the more top level talent will choose to sign with them. For a company that's only 2.5 years old, AEW has built up one of the best rosters I've seen in my lifetime. And it's crazy to think about because now AEW is basically a hybrid of the NXT and New Japan main event scene in 2017, with a few names from the indies thrown in here and there and a few top names from WWE as well. And that's not even counting the homegrown talents like MJF, Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, and Jungle Boy. Like I said, this roster is unbelievably stacked, and AEW has done a good job in balancing everybody's time with only one TV show, and it's only going to get better with the addition of their new TV show, Rampage. The amount of dream matches possible on this roster that we haven't even seen yet is insane. Just think about all the matches we haven't seen that we will in the future. Years from now, I feel we'll look back on the AEW roster of today and think, holy shit, they really had all that talent at one time. And the real crazy part is, I feel like Tony Khan is nowhere near done signing top talent to All Elite Wrestling.